The stars looked peaceful that night. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the Valiant, and watched them through the large windows. His ship was one of the best in the human fleet. It had powerful weapons, strong shields, and a crew of 200 brave men and women. They were far from Earth, patrolling the edge of human space near a place called the Orion Nebula. Jake was 40 years old and had been in space for half his life. He had short dark hair with some gray at the sides and tired eyes that had seen too much war. His crew respected him because he always kept them safe. Next to him stood Lieutenant Sophie Blake, a young woman with sharp eyes and quick thinking. She was in charge of weapons and tactics. Behind them, Commander Greg Palmer worked at his station, making sure the engines ran perfectly. Everything changed when the alarm started screaming. Sophie's fingers flew across her controls. Her face went pale. Space itself was tearing open in front of them. Large rips appeared in the darkness, glowing with sick purple light. Jake had never seen anything like it. He grabbed his chair as the ship shook. Then they came through. The alien ships were massive and horrible. They looked alive, like giant creatures made of metal and flesh. Their hulls pulsed like beating hearts. Bones from other species decorated their surfaces. Some of the bones were huge, bigger than houses. Jake felt his stomach turn. These aliens had killed entire races and wore their remains as trophies. 50 ships emerged from the tiers in space. Then 100, then more. They kept coming until the stars were blocked out. The largest ship was the size of a small moon. It sat in the center of the fleet like a dark king on a throne. Sophie checked her sensors. Her voice shook when she spoke. "Captain, I am reading energy signatures I have never seen before. These ships are using some kind of biological technology. And sir, they are heading straight for Earth." Jake's blood went cold. Earth was 3 days away at maximum speed, home to 12 billion people. His family lived there. His mother, his sister, his nephew, who was only 5 years old. He opened communications with Earth immediately. Before he could send the message, every screen on the bridge lit up. A face appeared. It was not human. The creature had gray skin stretched tight over a skull-like face. Its eyes were black holes that seemed to drink in light. When it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding metal. "I am High Commander Zarketh of the Chromath Empire. We have watched your species for many years. You are young and weak. You build your little colonies and think yourselves strong. You are wrong. Today, humanity ends." Jake stood up from his chair. He wanted to say something brave, something defiant, but Zarketh was not finished talking. "We do not simply conquer worlds," the alien continued. "We break them. We have destroyed 400 civilizations across 2,000 years. Each one begged for mercy. Each one fell. We use weapons that cannot be fought with guns or shields. We bring the void spawn. They are demons born from the nightmares of dying worlds. They feed on fear itself. When your people see them, they will go mad with terror. Your cities will burn. Your leaders will surrender. It always happens this way." The screen went dark. Jake looked at his crew. Every face showed the same expression. Fear, but also anger. Humans did not give up easily. "Get me Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Maximum priority. We need every ship in the fleet recalled immediately." The Chromath fleet moved toward Earth like a slow storm. The Valiant followed at a safe distance, sending constant reports. Greg worked day and night to squeeze more speed from the engines. Sophie analyzed the alien ships, looking for weaknesses. She found none. Dr. Helen Carter, the ship's scientist, came to the bridge. She was 50 years old with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She studied alien life forms and had been to more worlds than anyone else on the ship. She looked worried. "I have been researching the Chromath," she said quietly. "There are old stories about them in the databases. Legends from species that no longer exist. They all say the same thing. The Chromath do not lie about their weapons. If they say they have demons, then they have demons." Jake did not believe in demons. He believed in weapons, strategy, and courage. But he had learned to trust Helen's knowledge. "What do these stories say about the demons?" Helen pulled up old files on a screen. Images showed creatures that looked like living nightmares. They were tall and twisted, covered in dark smoke that moved like it was alive. Their eyes glowed red. They had too many limbs, and those limbs ended in claws that could tear through metal. "The records say they appear wherever fear exists," Helen explained. "They can walk through walls. Regular weapons do not stop them. They drain the life from people just by being near them. Entire armies have broken and run at the sight of a single void spawn." Sophie looked at the images. Then how did anyone survive to write these records? They did not, Helen said simply. These records were found in dead cities on empty worlds. The bridge went silent. Everyone understood what that meant. The Chromath left no survivors. They took everything. 2 days later, the Chromath fleet reached Earth. They positioned themselves in orbit, blocking all the major cities. Their ships spread out like a dark net covering the planet. Jake and his crew watched helplessly from space. The Valiant was still too far away to help. Earth's defense fleet scrambled. 500 ships rose to meet the invaders. Missiles launched. Energy weapons fired. The battle lit up the space around Earth like a deadly fireworks display. For a moment, Jake felt hope. Humanity was fighting back. Then Zarketh gave his order. Release the void spawn. The Chromath ships opened. From their hulls poured darkness. Thousands of shapes fell toward Earth like black rain. They did not fly. They simply moved through space as if it was water. They hit the atmosphere and kept going, leaving trails of shadow behind them. Jake watched the sensors. The demons were landing in every major city. New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Moscow, Sydney. Everywhere humans lived in large numbers. The plan was clear. The Chromath wanted to break humanity's spirit by attacking everyone at once. Reports started coming in from Earth. Jake listened to the radio channels. He heard screaming. He heard soldiers calling for backup. He heard news reporters describing monsters appearing in the streets. He heard children crying. Sophie gripped her console. Her knuckles turned white. We need to get down there now. Jake nodded. Greg, I do not care if the engines melt. Get us to Earth in the next 4 hours. Greg grinned despite the situation. He loved a challenge. You got it, Captain. Hold on to something. The Valiant's engines roared to life at full power. The ship shot forward, racing toward home. Behind them, the rest of the human fleet was also rushing back. But they were scattered across dozens of star systems. It would take days for most of them to arrive. Earth had only hours. Jake stood on the bridge and watched his home planet grow larger in the window. He could see the lights of cities. He could see the clouds. He could see the blue oceans he had swum in as a child. Somewhere down there, his family was hiding. Somewhere down there, 12 billion people were facing their worst nightmare. The Chromath thought they would win easily. They thought humans would break like all the others. They had studied humanity for years. They knew about human wars, human fears, human weaknesses, but they had missed something important. They had not understood what made humans different. They were about to learn. The demons had come to Earth expecting to find prey. They were going to find something else entirely. The first demon landed in Tokyo. It appeared in the middle of Shibuya Crossing, the busiest intersection in the world. Thousands of people were crossing the street when the sky turned dark. A hole opened in the air and the creature stepped through. It was 10 feet tall and made of shadow and smoke. Its body kept changing shape, never staying solid. Red eyes burned in what might have been a face. Long arms ended in claws that dripped black liquid onto the pavement. The liquid hissed and burned where it touched. The void spawn opened its mouth and screamed. The sound was not like any animal. It was the sound of pure fear given voice. On other worlds, entire cities had emptied at that scream. People had run until their hearts gave out. Armies had thrown down their weapons and begged for death rather than face it. The people in Shibuya Crossing stopped walking. They turned to look at the demon. And then something happened that had never happened before. Someone pulled out their phone and started recording. Within seconds, dozens of phones were pointed at the creature. People were not running away. They were getting closer, trying to get better angles for their videos. Some were even smiling. Is this a promotion for a new movie? Someone asked in Japanese. The special effects are amazing, another person said. The demon stood still. It was confused. It could sense emotions from living beings. Right now it sensed curiosity, excitement, and amusement, but not fear. Where was the fear? Fear was its food. Fear was everything. It tried again. The demon raised its claws and roared louder. It made its body grow bigger and more twisted. Mouths opened all over its form, showing teeth like broken glass. The crowd clapped and cheered. Across the planet, the same thing was happening in different ways. In New York, a demon appeared in Times Square. The tourists thought it was part of a Broadway show. In London, people started making jokes about it. In Mumbai, someone tried to offer it food. The demons were bewildered. This had never happened before. Of course, not everyone reacted with curiosity. When the demons started actually attacking, people finally understood this was real. The creatures moved through crowds, touching people with their dark claws. Anyone touched fell down, their life draining away. The demons fed on the fear of the dying, growing stronger. Military forces responded quickly. Soldiers arrived in the cities and opened fire. Bullets passed through the void spawn like they were made of smoke. Grenades exploded, but the demons just reformed. Tank shells hit them and did nothing. The creatures laughed, a horrible sound like breaking bones. In orbit, Commander Zarketh watched the feeds from Earth. He sat in his throne room aboard his flagship. The walls were covered in trophies from conquered worlds, weapons, armor, skulls, and crystals that held the last thoughts of dead civilizations. He had expected panic and surrender by now. Instead, he saw resistance. "Why are they not breaking?" he growled to his second in command. The void spawn should have them paralyzed with terror. His officer checked the reports. "The humans are fighting back. They do not seem to understand what they face. They think they can win with conventional weapons. Fools," Zarketh said. "Send more spawn. Increase the fear." More demons poured down from the Chromath ships. They spread through the cities like oil spreading on water. Now humans were dying by the thousands. Entire neighborhoods went dark as the creatures drained the life from everyone inside. Finally, the Chromath saw what they expected. Fear, panic, chaos. But something was still wrong. Humans were afraid, yes. But they were also angry. Very angry. The Valiant reached Earth orbit and immediately joined the fight. Jake ordered his weapons officer to target the demons in New York. Sophie fired every weapon the ship had. Energy beams, missiles, plasma rounds. They all passed through the creatures or hit buildings instead. The demons could not be hurt from space. Jake slammed his fist on his chair. "We need to get down there. Prep a shuttle team. We are going to ground level." Dr. Helen Carter stepped forward. "Captain, I need to come with you. I think I know something about these creatures." "Something important?" Jake looked at her. Helen was not a soldier, but she had been in dangerous situations before. He nodded. "Get your gear." The shuttle dropped through the atmosphere like a falling stone. Greg piloted it with his usual skill, dodging debris and other ships. They landed in Central Park, where the military had set up a command center. Tents and vehicles filled the park. Soldiers ran everywhere, carrying weapons and wounded people. A general met them at the landing zone. His name was Frank Morris, and he looked exhausted. His uniform was torn and covered in dust. General Morris had fought in 3 wars and never lost his nerve. Now his hands were shaking. "Captain Morrison, I am glad you are here. We need all the help we can get. These things are slaughtering us. We have lost 20,000 people in the last 6 hours. Nothing we do stops them." Jake looked around. He could see smoke rising from buildings all over the city. He could hear distant screams. A shadow moved between the buildings a few blocks away. A demon. It was hunting. Helen pulled out a small device from her pack. It was a scanner she used to study alien life. She pointed it at the distant demon and watched the readings. Her eyes widened. "General," she said urgently, "I need to see anyone who has survived a direct encounter with these creatures. Anyone who got close and lived." Morris pointed to a medical tent. "We have a few. Most people who get near those things do not make it. But there are some survivors. This way." Inside the tent, Helen found 5 people. 3 soldiers and 2 civilians. They all looked traumatized, staring at nothing. But they were alive. Helen scanned each of them with her device. She asked them questions. "What did you feel when you saw the demon? What did you think about? Did you see anything specific?" One of the soldiers, a young woman named Lisa Grant, answered clearly. She had short blonde hair and sharp green eyes. "I was terrified at first. It looked like something from a nightmare. But then I got angry. My whole squad was dead. My friends were dead. And this thing was just standing there like it owned the place. So I stopped being scared and started being mad. Really mad." "What happened then?" Helen asked. Lisa looked at her hands. "The demon backed away from me, just for a second. Like it was surprised. Then it went after someone else who was still scared. I thought maybe I imagined it." "You did not imagine it," Helen said. She showed Lisa the scanner readings. "These creatures feed on fear, but they are also psychic. They read emotions and thoughts. When you stopped being afraid and started feeling rage, you became less appetizing. You were not giving them what they needed." Jake understood immediately. "So we need soldiers who can control their fear?" Helen shook her head. "Not exactly. We need people who can replace their fear with something else, something strong. Anger works. But I think there might be something even better. She pulled up files on her tablet. Images appeared showing horror movies, scary books, video games with monsters. Jake was confused. What does entertainment have to do with fighting demons? Helen's eyes were bright with excitement despite the danger around them. Everything. Humans are unique. We are the only species I know that creates fear for fun. We make movies to scare ourselves. We write books about monsters. We play games where we fight nightmares. We have been doing this for thousands of years in every culture. Sophie joined them. She had been listening. So we are used to scary things. That still does not tell us how to kill these demons. Helen smiled. It's not about killing them with weapons. It's about psychology. These voids spawn red minds. They sense what we fear. But what if we show them our monsters? What if we project our horror stories back at them? Humans have spent centuries imagining the most terrible things possible. Every monster, every nightmare, every scary story ever told. All of that is in our collective consciousness. Jake still did not fully understand, but he trusted Helen's knowledge. How do we do that? How do we weaponize scary stories? I need to run tests, Helen said. But I think we can use neural amplifiers, technology that broadcasts thoughts and emotions. If we can get people to focus on humanity's monsters while wearing those amplifiers, we might be able to hurt these demons, or at least drive them away. General Morris had been listening. That is the craziest plan I have ever heard. But we are out of options. What do you need? Helen started listing equipment. Advanced scanners, neural interface devices, volunteers who know horror fiction, and time. Most importantly, time. Every minute, more people died. The demons were spreading faster now. They had learned that humans tasted good. Earth had billions of people to feed on. High above on his flagship, Zarketh watched his invasion proceed. It was slower than he liked, but it was working. The humans were dying. Soon they would surrender or be extinct. Either way, Earth would belong to the Chromath Empire. Another world added to the collection. Another species erased from existence. He did not yet understand his mistake. He had studied humans, but only their wars and technologies. He had not studied their stories, their entertainment, their mythology. He did not know that humans had been scaring each other for fun since they lived in caves. He did not know that every culture on Earth had their own monsters, their own demons, their own nightmares. Zarketh thought he had unleashed his demons on humanity. He did not realize he was about to meet theirs. Dr. Helen Carter worked through the night. Her research team set up shop in an underground facility beneath the Pentagon. The walls were thick concrete, safe from the demons prowling above. Scientists and engineers from around the world joined via video link. Everyone wanted to help. The equipment Helen needed already existed. Neural amplifiers were used in hospitals to help people with brain injuries. The military used them for training simulations. Helen's idea was to reverse the technology. Instead of putting information into the brain, they would broadcast what was already there. Thoughts, emotions, and most importantly, images of monsters. But they needed test subjects, volunteers who understood horror and could think about it clearly even while wearing strange equipment. Jake sent out a call on all military channels. We need soldiers who have read horror books or watched scary movies. Report to Central Park Command immediately. 200 people showed up within an hour. Soldiers, pilots, technicians, even a few cooks. One of them was Chris Jordan, a medic who had served 3 tours fighting space pirates. He was 30 years old with scarred hands and a quiet voice. He loved horror movies. Had watched them since he was a kid. Another volunteer was a Marine named Danny Cole. He was young, only 22, but he had written horror short stories before joining the military. His stories were published online and had thousands of readers. He knew how to describe terror in vivid detail. Helen briefed the volunteers. What we are attempting has never been done before. The demons feed on fear, but they are also vulnerable to it. If we can project powerful images of monsters, creatures that humans have created in our stories, we might be able to hurt them or drive them away. You will wear neural amplifiers. Your job is to think about the scariest things you know. Focus on them. Make them real in your mind. Chris raised his hand. What kind of monsters should we think about? Anything, Helen answered. Zombies, vampires, ghosts, serial killers, cosmic horrors, body horror, anything from any culture. Japanese yokai, European werewolves, African demons, American urban legends. Every culture has nightmares. Use them all. The first test happened 2 hours later. 5 volunteers put on the neural amplifiers, which looked like silver headbands with small lights. They walked toward a demon that was trapped in an alley by concrete barriers. The creature had killed 20 people before the military cornered it. It hissed and reached toward the volunteers with its dark claws. Helen watched from a safe distance with cameras. She spoke into a radio. "Activate the amplifiers. Begin focused thought." Chris closed his eyes and thought about his favorite horror movie, a film about an unstoppable killer who never stopped chasing his victims. He imagined the killer in detail. The white mask, the kitchen knife, the way he walked slowly but always caught up. The feeling of being hunted with no escape. Danny thought about a story he had written, a tale about a creature that lived in mirrors and pulled people into a dark world where they were hunted forever. He imagined the mirror cracking, the hand reaching through, the screaming. The other 3 volunteers thought about their own monsters. Zombies eating flesh, vampires draining blood, something ancient and evil awakening from the deep ocean. The demon stopped moving. Its red eyes flickered. It tilted its head like it was listening to something. Then it took a step backward. The volunteers kept walking forward, focusing on their thoughts. The demon took another step back, then another. It was retreating. Helen could barely believe it. It is working. Keep going. Chris opened his eyes while still maintaining the thought. He looked at the demon. For the first time, he saw fear in those burning red eyes. The creature was scared. Of him, of what he was thinking. Chris smiled. Not a happy smile. A predator's smile. He took another step forward. The demon shrieked and dissolved into smoke. It was gone. The volunteers stood in the empty alley, breathing hard. They looked at each other in shock. They had just made a demon run away by thinking about scary movies. Jake witnessed the test from the command center. He immediately contacted General Morris. "It works. We need to scale this up now. How many neural amplifiers can we produce?" Morris made some calls. Factories around the world started producing the devices. Within 12 hours, they had 5,000 units ready. Within 24 hours, 10,000. The Terran Federation gave the project a name. Project Pandora. Pandora units formed in every city under attack. Each unit had between 5 and 10 people wearing amplifiers. They received basic training on how to focus their thoughts and maintain concentration even during combat. Then they were sent into the streets to hunt demons. The results were remarkable. In Berlin, a Pandora unit drove away 3 demons from a hospital. In Tokyo, they cleared an entire neighborhood. In Mumbai, they saved a school full of children. Word spread through the human military. "We have a weapon, we can fight back," but it was not easy. The demons were dangerous even when retreating. Many Pandora unit members died. The creatures learned to attack quickly before the humans could focus their thoughts. Sometimes the amplifiers failed or broke. Sometimes people panicked and could not maintain concentration. Every victory cost lives. Lisa Grant, the soldier who first discovered anger could repel the demons, joined a Pandora unit. She was a natural. When she focused on horror imagery, the amplifier readings went off the charts. Helen studied her brain patterns and found something interesting. Lisa had childhood trauma, bad memories. She had learned to control her fear at a young age. That made her perfect for this work. Sophie Blake coordinated the Pandora units from the Valiant. She tracked demon movements and sent units where they were needed most. She treated it like a chess game. The demons were powerful pieces, but they moved in predictable patterns. They went where fear was strongest. Sophie sent Pandora units to intercept them. Commander Greg Palmer had a different project. He wanted to install neural amplifiers on ships. If it worked on the ground, why not in space? He modified the Valiant's communication arrays to broadcast psychic signals. It took him 3 days of nonstop work, but he got it functioning. The first test came when a group of demons tried to board the Valiant. They floated through space like dark ghosts, passing through the hull. Greg activated his new system. Every crew member on the ship focused on their worst fears and their favorite horror stories. The amplifiers broadcast it all at maximum power. The demons froze in midair. One of them actually screamed. They turned and fled back toward the Chromath ships. Greg laughed and slapped his console. "It works in space too. Captain, we can protect the entire fleet with this." Jake immediately shared the technology with every human ship. Within a week, the space battle changed completely. Demons could no longer board human vessels. The Chromath lost their boarding advantage. Ship-to-ship combat became more conventional, and humans were good at conventional warfare. On his flagship, Zarketh watched his casualties mount. He had lost thousands of void spawn. 30% of his demon army was gone. This had never happened before. No species had ever developed a defense against the spawn. He called a meeting with his war council. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "The void spawn are invincible. They feed on fear. These humans should be helpless." One of his officers brought forward captured data from Earth's internet. "High Commander, the humans have something called horror entertainment. They create fear for pleasure. They watch it. They read it. They immerse themselves in terror voluntarily. Their entire culture is filled with monsters and nightmares." Zarketh looked at the images. Movies showing zombies eating people, books describing cosmic horrors, video games where players fought demons. He could not understand. Why would a species do this to themselves? His science officer explained. "It appears humans use fear as training. They expose themselves to scary scenarios in safe environments. This makes them resistant to real fear. They have been doing this for thousands of years. Their psychology is different from any species we have encountered." Zarketh crushed the data pad in his hand. "Then we will increase the assault. Send every void spawn we have. Overwhelm them with numbers. They cannot resist if we flood every city at once." But his officers looked worried. "High Commander, we have already committed most of our spawn forces. If we lose them, we will be vulnerable. Perhaps we should consider a different strategy." Zarketh's eyes burned with anger. "No. We have never failed to conquer a world. We will not start now. Humans are weak. They are young. They are nothing. Send everything. Crush them." The officers bowed and left. They would follow orders. But they were afraid. They had seen the reports. Humans were not breaking. They were adapting. They were learning. And worst of all, they were winning. On Earth, Helen looked at the casualty reports. They were winning battles, but the war was far from over. Millions of people had died. Cities were in ruins. The demons kept coming. For every one they drove away, 2 more appeared. Humanity was tough, but they were not invincible. She called Jake on a secure channel. "Captain, we have bought time, but we need a permanent solution. The Chromath have billions of these demons. They can keep sending them forever. We need to hit them at the source." Jake looked at the Chromath fleet through his window. The massive ships hung in orbit like dark moons. "What are you suggesting?" Helen's voice was grim. "We need to take the fight to them. We need to..." Zarketh made his decision in anger and desperation. The humans were resisting too well. His void spawn were being driven back. His reputation was at stake. In 2,000 years, the Chromath had never failed to conquer a world. He would not be the first commander to lose. Deep in the lowest levels of his flagship, sealed behind doors that had not opened in centuries, the Ancient Ones waited. They were the first void spawn ever created. The originals. They were not just demons. They were fragments of the void itself, pieces of the darkness that existed before stars were born. Every Chromath commander knew the warnings. The Ancient Ones were too powerful, too dangerous. They did not simply feed on fear. They consumed entire civilizations in minutes. They had destroyed worlds that the Chromath themselves could not conquer. Using them was forbidden except in the most desperate situations. Zarketh's war council gathered in the throne room. His officers looked worried when he announced his plan. "High Commander," one of them said carefully, "releasing the Ancient Ones is extremely risky. We may not be able to control them once they are free." Zarketh slammed his fist on his throne. "I do not care about risk. I care about results. The humans have made fools of us long enough. The Ancient Ones will end this war in hours. Prepare the chambers. Release 3 of them." The officers had no choice. They followed orders. Deep in the ship, ancient seals were broken. Doors opened with the sound of grinding metal. 3 containers, each the size of a building, cracked open. Darkness poured out. Not the darkness of night, the darkness of nothingness. The darkness that existed before light was invented. The Ancient Ones emerged. They were massive. Each one was as large as a small moon. Their bodies were not solid. They kept shifting and changing, covered in thousands of eyes and mouths. The eyes saw everything. The mouths screamed in languages that had been dead for millions of years. They descended toward Earth slowly, like falling night. As they entered the atmosphere, the sky turned black. Not the black of storm clouds, the black of absolute absence. Cities below went dark as they passed overhead. Streetlights failed. Electronic devices shut down. Even the sun seemed dimmer. On the ground, people looked up and saw the Ancient Ones. Many collapsed immediately, their minds unable to process what they were seeing. These were not creatures that evolution had prepared humans to understand. They were too alien, too vast, too wrong. The Pandora units tried their techniques. Soldiers wearing neural amplifiers focused on horror imagery. They thought about monsters and nightmares. But it did not work. The Ancient Ones were too big, too powerful. The human minds could not project strongly enough to affect them. One Ancient One landed in New York. Its presence alone killed thousands. People nearby simply stopped living. Their hearts stopped. Their brains shut down. The creature did not even have to touch them. Just being near it was fatal. Another landed in London. The third descended toward Tokyo. The world watched in horror. This was the end. Humanity had fought well, but they had lost. The Ancient Ones would consume Earth in hours, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop them. Jake watched from the Valiant. He felt helpless. His weapons were useless. His ship's neural amplifiers did nothing against these creatures. He contacted Helen at the Pentagon. "Tell me you have a plan. Please tell me you have something." Helen sat in her lab, surrounded by computers and data. Her team had been working non-stop since the Ancient Ones appeared. They had analyzed the creatures' energy signatures. They had studied their behavior. And Helen had made a discovery. "Captain," she said, "I think I know what we need to do, but it is going to sound insane." "At this point, insane is all we have left," Jake replied. "What is your idea?" Helen explained quickly. "The Ancient Ones feed on the collective fear of civilizations. They consume the terror of entire species. But humans have a unique relationship with fear. We have spent our entire history imagining the end of the world. Nuclear war, climate disaster, asteroid impacts, alien invasions. We have written books about it. Made movies, created art. We are obsessed with our own extinction. I do not see how that helps us," Jake said. Helen continued. "Every time we imagine the end, we also imagine surviving it. Every apocalypse story has survivors. Every extinction scenario has humans who refuse to give up. We are a species that looks at impossible odds and says no. We do not accept death. We fight even when fighting is pointless. That is our strength." "You want to weaponize hope," Sophie said, listening from her station. "You want to show the Ancient Ones that humans do not break." "Not just hope," Helen corrected. "Defiance, rage, love, spite, all of it. Every emotion that makes humans fight back. But we need everyone, every human on Earth and in the colonies. We need to link their minds together and broadcast it all at once. If we can show the Ancient Ones what humanity truly is, we might be able to drive them away." General Morris joined the conversation. "How do we link 8 billion minds together?" Helen had already designed the system. "We use the existing internet and satellite network. Everyone with a neural amplifier becomes a node. Everyone without one can connect through their phones and computers. We have the technology. We just need time to set it up." "How much time?" Jake asked. 6 hours. "We do not have 6 hours," Morris said. "The Ancient Ones will have consumed half the planet by then. Then we buy time," Jake decided. "All ships, all units, all forces. We throw everything we have at those things, slow them down, distract them, make them work for every inch. We give Dr. Carter her 6 hours. The human military launched a desperate assault. Every ship in orbit fired every weapon. Missiles streaked down from space. Nuclear weapons were authorized for use in unpopulated areas. The goal was not to kill the Ancient Ones. The goal was to annoy them enough to slow their advance. It worked, barely. The creatures were distracted by the attacks. They paused to consume the fear of the soldiers attacking them. That bought minutes. Every minute counted. Jake ordered the Valiant to descend into the atmosphere. It was dangerous. The ship was not designed for atmospheric combat. But he needed to be close to the action. Commander Palmer protested. "Captain, if we go any lower, the heat will damage the hull, then let it burn," Jake said. "We are not running away. Not today." The Valiant dropped through the clouds. It positioned itself over Central Park, where Helen had set up the main broadcasting station. The ship's presence boosted the signal strength. Other ships followed. Soon there were 50 human vessels hovering over major cities, all preparing to become amplification nodes. Helen worked frantically. Her fingers flew across keyboards. Engineers helped route the connections. The network was growing. 1 million people connected, then 10 million, then 100 million. The system was working, but it was not fast enough. The Ancient One in New York began moving toward Central Park. It could sense something happening. Something powerful. It wanted to stop it. Its shadow fell over the park. People screamed and ran. Even trained soldiers felt primal terror. Lisa Grant stood her ground. She was part of the security team protecting the broadcasting station. She wore a neural amplifier and held a rifle even though she knew bullets were useless. The Ancient One loomed over her so tall that she had to lean back to see its highest parts. 1,000 eyes looked down at her. 100 mouths opened. Lisa activated her amplifier to maximum power. She thought about everyone she had lost. Her friends who died in the war. Her brother who had been killed by the first wave of demons. She thought about her niece, only 3 years old, hiding somewhere in the city. She thought about all the people depending on her to hold the line. The Ancient One paused. Just for a second. It sensed something unexpected. This tiny human was not running. She was angry, furious, but also determined. The creature did not understand that emotion. It knew fear. It knew despair. But defiance was new. More soldiers joined Lisa, then civilians. They formed a line between the Ancient One and the broadcasting station. None of them thought they could win. But they stood anyway. That was the human way. Stand even when standing is useless. Fight even when fighting is hopeless. Helen's voice came over every speaker. The network is ready. Everyone connected. We are going live in 10 seconds. All personnel, focus your thoughts. Show them who we are. 8 billion human minds linked together in that moment. It was the largest shared experience in history. Every person contributed their feelings, their thoughts, their fears, and their refusal to surrender. The signal broadcast from every transmitter on Earth and from every ship in orbit. The Ancient One stopped moving. All 3 of them. They felt something impossible. A species that welcomed their own nightmares. A species that made games of survival. A species that looked at extinction and called it a challenge. The creatures sensed billions of minds that had practiced fear as entertainment. They sensed a civilization built on the principle that you never give up, no matter what. For the first time in their ancient existence, the creatures felt something they had never experienced before. They felt small. The Ancient Ones began to retreat. Slowly at first, like they were fighting against invisible chains. The one over New York lifted higher into the sky. The one in London turned away from the city. The one over Tokyo started dissolving at the edges, its form becoming less solid. 8 billion human minds continued to broadcast. The signal was overwhelming. Every person contributed something different. A soldier thought about protecting his family. A mother thought about her children's future. A teacher thought about students who deserved to grow up. An artist thought about beauty that still needed to be created. A scientist thought about discoveries not yet made. But they all shared one common thought. We refuse to die. Not today, not ever. Try again. The Ancient Ones felt this defiance like physical pain. They were used to consuming fear, despair, and resignation. They fed on civilizations that accepted their fate. But humans were different. Even in their terror, even facing extinction, they said no. They pushed back. They fought. Dr. Helen Carter watched her screens in amazement. The readings showed the Ancient Ones weakening. Their energy signatures were dropping. They were actually retreating. She had hoped her plan would drive them away. She had not expected it to hurt them. The Ancient One over New York suddenly screamed. It was a sound that shattered windows for miles. Then it simply vanished, pulling back into the void from which it came. The one over London followed seconds later. The one over Tokyo lingered for a moment as if trying to understand what had happened, then it too disappeared. The sky cleared. Sunlight returned. People on the ground stared upward in shock. The Ancient Ones were gone. The lesser void spawn, feeling their master's retreat, dissolved like smoke in wind. Within minutes, every demon on Earth had vanished. Silence fell over the cities. Then slowly, people began to cheer. They cried and hugged each other. Soldiers collapsed in relief. Some laughed. Some just sat down and shook. They had survived the impossible. On his flagship, Zarketh watched everything fall apart. His ultimate weapons had fled. His demon army was gone. He stood alone in his throne room, surrounded by trophies from 400 conquered worlds. He had never lost before. Never. The shame burned worse than any physical pain. His officers entered cautiously. "High Commander, what are your orders?" Zarkith said nothing for a long moment. Then quietly he spoke. "Withdraw. Take the fleet and leave the system. We will not return to this world. But High Commander, the humans are weakened. We still have conventional weapons. We could still win." Zarkith turned to face them. His eyes were haunted. "No, we cannot win. These humans are not like other species. They do not fear death the way others do. They embrace it. They play with it. They make entertainment from it. They are insane, and that makes them dangerous. We leave. Now." Jake watched from the bridge of the Valiant as the Chromath fleet began to move. The massive ships turned slowly and opened portals in space. One by one, they disappeared into hyperspace. Within an hour, they were all gone. The invasion was over. Sophie stood next to him, hardly believing it. "We won." "We actually won." Jake nodded slowly. "Yes, but at great cost." The reports came in over the following days. 5 million dead, dozens of cities damaged or destroyed, thousands of buildings reduced to rubble. The economic damage was beyond calculation. Earth would take years to fully recover, but humanity had survived. That was what mattered. They had faced extinction and refused to accept it. They had met demons and driven them away with nightmares of their own. They had proven something important. Humans could not be broken by fear. The Terran Federation declared a week of mourning for the dead. Then they got to work, rebuilding. It was what humans did. They fell down and got back up. They lost and tried again. They faced disasters and rebuilt stronger. Jake took leave to visit his family. His mother, sister, and nephew had survived by hiding in a basement for 3 days. When he saw them, he hugged them tighter than ever before. His nephew, little Ethan, asked him about the demons. "Were they really that scary, Uncle Jake?" Jake knelt down to look his nephew in the eyes. "Yes, they were very scary, but you know what? We were scarier. Remember that, Ethan. No matter what frightens you, you can always be braver than your fear." Sophie was promoted to commander and given her own ship. She continued developing psychological warfare techniques. The Terran Federation created a new military branch called the Psychological Defense Force. Sophie was put in charge of training. She recruited people who understood fear, horror writers, therapists, survivors of trauma, anyone who knew how to face nightmares. Greg Palmer received medals for his work on the ship-based neural amplifiers. He used the reward money to start a company that manufactured defense systems. But his first project was not weapons. It was rebuilding homes for people who had lost everything in the invasion. Helen became famous across human space. Universities offered her positions. Governments wanted her as an advisor. She turned them all down. Instead, she started a research institute dedicated to understanding human psychology and how it could be used in future conflicts. She called it the Institute for Human Resilience. Lisa Grant left the military and became a teacher. She taught self-defense and psychological resilience to children. She wanted kids to know that fear was normal, but it did not have to control them. Her classes were always full. 6 months after the invasion ended, something unexpected happened. A delegation arrived from the Galactic Council, an organization of peaceful alien species. They had watched the invasion from afar. Now they wanted to meet with humans. The delegation consisted of 5 species. They were all different shapes and sizes. Some looked like insects. Others were more like plants. One was made entirely of light. They met with human leaders in Geneva. The speaker was a being called Ambassador Threll. She was tall and thin with 4 arms and silver skin. She spoke through a translation device. "We have come to formally invite humanity to join the Galactic Council. We have never seen a species defeat the Chromath. What you accomplished is remarkable." The human representative asked the obvious question. "Why did you not help us during the invasion?" Threll looked uncomfortable. "We have a strict policy of non-interference. Each species must prove itself capable of survival before joining the Council. Also, to be honest, we were afraid. The Chromath are the most dangerous species in known space. Most species run when they appear. You fought back. That shows either great courage or great madness. We believe it is both." The human delegation discussed the offer. It took 3 days of debate. Some people wanted to join immediately. Others were angry that the aliens had watched them die without helping. Eventually, they voted to accept membership, but with conditions. Humans would share their defensive technology. They would also maintain their own military and the right to act independently if needed. The Galactic Council agreed. They were relieved. Having humans as allies was better than having them as enemies. News spread quickly through the galaxy. The Chromath had been defeated by humans, by a young species that most advanced civilizations had ignored. Overnight, humanity's reputation changed. They went from unknown newcomers to feared warriors. Other species started hiring human advisors. They wanted to learn psychological defense techniques. They wanted to understand how humans thought. Most importantly, they wanted to make sure humans stayed friendly. Jake returned to command of the Valiant, now designated as the flagship of the First Contact Fleet. His mission was to explore new regions of space and make peaceful contact with other species. But his ship was also equipped with the most advanced neural amplifiers ever built, just in case. 1 year after the invasion, Jake stood on the observation deck with Sophie and Helen. They watched Earth slowly turning below them. The planet looked beautiful from space. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. You could not see the scars from orbit. "Do you think they will come back?" Sophie asked. "The Chromath?" Helen shook her head. "No. We hurt them in ways they cannot understand. We showed them something they had never seen before. A species that weaponizes its own fears. They will tell stories about us. Warning stories. Stay away from the humans. They are dangerous." "Good," Jake said. "Let them be afraid. Let the whole galaxy know. Humans do not start fights, but we always finish them. We survived because we understood something simple. The scariest monster in any story is not the one hiding under the bed. It is the one who refuses to run from what is hiding under the bed." Sophie smiled. "So what now? What does humanity do with this reputation?" Jake looked out at the stars. There were billions of them. Billions of worlds to explore. Billions of species to meet. Some would be friendly. Some would be hostile. But humanity would face them all the same way they had faced the Chromath. With courage, creativity, and a complete refusal to give up. "We do what we have always done," Jake answered. "We survive. We adapt. We tell stories about monsters and laugh at them. We look at the darkness and light a fire. We face the unknown and call it an adventure. We are human. That is what we do." And so humanity moved forward into the galaxy. They brought their technology, their art, their culture, and their stories. They made friends and allies. They defended those who could not defend themselves. They became known not just as warriors, but as protectors. The galaxy learned an important lesson. When the aliens unleashed their demons. 5 years had passed since the invasion. Earth had rebuilt most of its damaged cities. New buildings stood where ruins once lay. Parks replaced bomb craters. Life continued as it always did for humans. But things were different now. Everyone knew what lurked beyond the stars. Everyone knew that monsters were real. Children grew up learning about the Chromath War in school. They studied the Void Spawn and the Ancient Ones. They learned about Project Pandora and the neural amplifiers. Most importantly, they learned that fear could be faced. That courage was not the absence of terror, but the choice to stand despite it. Captain Jake Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, commanded the entire First Contact Fleet. He had 60 ships under his command, including the Valiant. His fleet's mission was to explore uncharted space and establish diplomatic relations with new species. In 5 years, they had made contact with 20 different civilizations. Some meetings went well. Others required careful negotiation. None had resulted in war. Jake sat in his ready room reviewing reports when Sophie entered. She was now Captain Blake, commanding her own ship called the Guardian. She had returned to Earth for a conference and stopped by to visit her old commanding officer. "Admiral," she said with a smile. "You look tired," Jake laughed. "That is because I am tired. Command means endless paperwork. I miss the days when all I had to worry about was flying and fighting." They talked for an hour about old times and new developments. Sophie told him about a species called the Veltar, who had requested human help. They were being raided by pirates and needed military advisors. Jake approved the mission. Helping others was part of humanity's new role in the galaxy. "Have you heard from Helen?" Jake asked. Sophie nodded. "She is doing well. Her institute has branches on 12 colonies now. They are training people in psychological resilience and defense. She also published a new book. It is called Understanding Fear, and it became a bestseller across 3 star systems. Helen had become one of the most influential scientists in human space. Her research into fear, courage, and human psychology had revolutionized both medicine and military training. She gave lectures to packed auditoriums. Other species sent their best minds to study under her. Everyone wanted to understand how humans had achieved the impossible. But not everyone was happy with humanity's new position in the galaxy. Some species viewed humans as dangerous. They whispered that any civilization willing to weaponize its own nightmares could not be trusted. They formed a coalition called the Preservation Alliance, dedicated to limiting human expansion. The leader of this alliance was Ambassador Kelran, a reptilian being from a world called Thessar Prime. He believed humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable. He gave speeches warning other species about the human threat. They defeated the Chromath, yes, but at what cost to their own sanity? They embrace violence. They celebrate warfare. They are not civilized. The Terran Federation responded calmly. They invited Kelran to visit Earth and see human civilization firsthand. He accepted, perhaps hoping to find evidence to support his claims. Instead, what he found surprised him. Helen volunteered to be his guide. She took him to museums showing human art from thousands of years of history. She took him to theaters where plays about love and loss made the audience cry. She took him to schools where children learned music and poetry. She showed him hospitals where doctors saved lives. She showed him the memorial for the 5 million who died in the Chromath War. Kelran walked through the memorial gardens in silence. 5 million names carved in stone. Flowers grew between the markers. Families visited their loved ones. He turned to Helen with confusion in his eyes. I do not understand. You celebrate warfare, yet you mourn your dead so deeply. You create weapons from fear, yet you also create beauty. How can both exist in one species? Helen sat on a bench and gestured for Kelran to join her. That is the human contradiction. We are capable of terrible violence and incredible kindness, often from the same person. We make war when necessary and peace when possible. We face our fears by turning them into stories, and those stories teach us courage. We are not simple creatures. We are complicated, messy, contradictory, and that is our strength. Kelran thought about this for a long time. Eventually, he returned to his homeworld and dissolved the Preservation Alliance. He gave a final speech explaining his change of heart. I feared humans because I did not understand them. Now I realize that understanding them is impossible, and that is acceptable. They are our allies. Let that be enough. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, the Chromath Empire was falling apart. The defeat at Earth had shattered their reputation. Worlds they had conquered for centuries saw weakness and rebelled. The empire that had lasted 2,000 years was collapsing in just 5. Zarketh was no longer High Commander. He had been stripped of his rank and exiled. He lived alone on a dead moon, spending his days replaying the invasion in his mind. He could not understand where he had gone wrong. The void spawn had always worked before, always. What made humans different? One day he received an unexpected visitor. A human shuttle landed on his moon. Helen Carter stepped out wearing an environmental suit. She had traveled across half the galaxy to find him. Zarketh watched her approach through his window. He considered not opening his door, but curiosity won. He let her in. Why are you here? He asked. Come to gloat about your victory. Helen removed her helmet and looked at him. No. I came to give you answers. I know you do not understand what happened. I thought you deserved to know. She explained everything. How humans had evolved on a dangerous world and learned to cope with fear. How they had created stories and myths to process trauma. How every culture independently developed ways to face nightmares. How entertainment about scary things was actually training for real danger. How humanity had accidentally prepared for the void spawn for thousands of years without knowing it. Zarketh listened. When she finished, he sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he spoke. We studied your species for decades. We analyzed your wars, your technologies, your weaknesses. But we never looked at your entertainment. We never understood that you train yourselves to face fear from childhood. We never realized you had been preparing for us all along, completely by accident. Helen nodded. That is correct. Humans are not fearless. We are terrified of many things. But we learned long ago that running from fear only makes it stronger. So we face it. We make friends with it. We laugh at it. That is how we survived as a species. That is how we will continue to survive. Before she left, Helen gave Zarketh a gift. It was a book, a collection of human horror stories translated into his language. Read these, she said. Understand what you faced. Then maybe you will find peace. Zarketh took the book. After Helen left, he began reading. Story after story of humans facing monsters, defeating them, being defeated by them, learning from them. By the time he finished the book, he understood. Humans were not special because they were fearless. They were special because they refused to let fear win. Back on Earth, life continued in its messy, beautiful human way. New movies were made about the Chromath War. Some were serious dramas about loss and courage. Others were action-packed adventures. A few were comedies that made fun of the aliens. All of them were popular. Humans needed to process what happened, and they did it the way they always had, through stories. Lisa Grant opened her 10th self-defense school. She had branches across 6 colonies now, teaching tens of thousands of students. Her classes focused not just on physical defense but mental resilience. She taught children that being scared was okay, but staying scared was a choice. Her motto was simple: fear is information, courage is action. Greg Palmer's company had become one of the largest defense contractors in human space, but he never forgot his roots. Every year he personally delivered supplies to colonies that were still rebuilding from the war. He believed in helping people, not just selling to them. Chris Jordan and Danny Cole, the medic and writer who had been in the first Pandora unit test, became lifelong friends. They wrote a book together about their experiences. It was called We Made Demons Afraid, and became required reading in military academies across human space. The neural amplifier technology was refined and improved. Every human colony had them now. They were used in schools to help students learn, in hospitals to help patients heal, in military training to prepare soldiers, and in emergency systems ready to be activated if another threat like the Chromath ever appeared. But the galaxy remained mostly peaceful. Other aggressive species had learned from the Chromath's mistake. They left humanity alone. Some even apologized for past hostilities and requested treaties. The lesson was clear. Do not threaten Earth unless you are prepared to face 8 billion minds that have been practicing fear as entertainment since they lived in caves. Jake stood on the bridge of the Valiant as it prepared to leave on another exploration mission. His crew was ready. His ship was strong. The stars waited ahead, full of unknown wonders and dangers. He thought about everything that had happened over the past 5 years. The invasion, the victory, the changes that followed. Humanity had proven something important to the galaxy and to themselves. They were not the strongest species, not the smartest, not the oldest, but they were the most stubborn. They were the ones who looked